it's so good to be back in the beauty shop. It's been a year now for me. This pandemic has gotten on my last nerve.
Girl, don't even start talking about that.
Oh my goodness. When we left work in March of last year, we thought 2 weeks. We're going to be off from work for 2 weeks. And here we are a year later. I am so over Corona.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you not by yourself.
Oh my goodness.
Not at all.
So how y'all been doing? What's going on?
Fine. Just fine.
Hanging
Okay.
tough. Hanging tough.
Y'all doing okay?
Yeah.
Well, good. You know, I wanted to throw something out at you guys. I was just reading this article today that kind of put wind in my jaws. And so I thought I'd just share with my sisters to see what you guys thought about it. You know, the article is entitled Failing Up: Why Some Employees Climb the Corporate Ladder Despite Mediocrity. And the gist of, you know, this whole article was allowing employees to fail as a part of their learning curve. Because they feel like that, you know, we can easily produce top talent if you allow people to do that. And so when I was reading the article, you know, on the surface it sounded all right. But when you start thinking about that, not everybody is allowed to fail. Only some of us are allowed to fail. And when I say some of us, it's not this.
It ain't us.
It's not this. And so, you know, I think that concept in theory is great. But in reality, it doesn't work for everybody. And so the more I read this article, the madder I got about that, just thinking about how, you know, when they fail, it's a learning curve. But when I fail, or when we fail, it's our performance. It shows up on our performance review, right? And it's a big deal. So what do you guys think about that?
I don't know, when on my job, when we fail, sometimes it can be the death penalty.
Sure.
You know, it may be death to your career. Just never know. But in nursing, at least I know that mistakes are handled pretty evenly across the board. But even with that, I think there's a lot more grace given sometimes for other races when their mistakes are made. And I guess the thing that I learned to do is you just always have to be honest about mistakes, though, because there's nothing that's more important than integrity. If you're taking care of people who are ill, they need to know that you are honest and that you have integrity.
Sure.
If you don't have that, I can't trust you with anything.
Sure.
And so, but yeah, you're right. And the other thing that could happen sometime is with promotions. Even though there's so many more female nurses, sometimes men definitely have an advantage
Sometimes.
in promotion because people in administration want to see a male run the operational unit. And so I think there are advantages sometimes that are given to males, that are given to other races. And we have to work a lot harder, and we have to be a lot better, and we have to be more efficient and more, show more in our performance, and really do a lot more to get just a little bit ahead. But I've learned that Jesus has got you. He will take care of us in the workplace.
Well, unfortunately, Jesus ain't in the workplace a lot of times.
I take him with me, baby. I take him with me.
Sometimes I feel like I'm the only one that bring him to work.
Yeah, he helped me get to be a director, and I'm thankful for that. But it took 30 years to get there.
Yeah.
But I took him with me, and he worked it out.
Right.
You have to, you always have to run faster, jump higher.
Yes.
As a black woman.
And even understanding the male perspective of it, though,
Yes.
I remember when someone close to me applied for a principalship. He was an automatic shoo-in because he was a male. And I knew women that have been trying to break through, you know, pass their test, pass their exam, but still can't get beyond the interview process.
Absolutely.
So men do have an advantage, and that will kind of discourage you.
Yeah. And you know, on my job, I work for an oil and gas company. And so an oil and gas company is a male-dominated industry, and more importantly, it's a white male dominated industry. And so it's really hard for women in general to move up the corporate ladder at least at the same pace as our male counterparts, right? And kind of like Julia said, you know, they don't even have to apply for jobs. We have to apply for jobs. They just, because they know you and y'all go to lunch together, or you know, y'all play golf, then I think that I'm gonna make you my VP, right? And so it's harder to break that glass ceiling when you have those type of things working against you.
It is.
I will say this, though. We talk about taking Jesus with you. What happened for me when I was in that space was God just sent a white male supervisor who was my advocate. And he just made sure that this little new young professional got opportunities to go to the conferences. He looked out for me. I was, you know, a little rough around the edges sometimes when handling some things, and he, you know, would bring me in and be like, look, say it this way, do that. And I mean, and he just really looked out for me, and I feel like that set me on the course for having a lot of career success. And so, you know, even though it is challenging,
It is.
you know, God will send those folks who will look out for you, and just, you know, and he'll open those doors for you.
He will. And in the course of my career, I had those kind of advocates. Now, there were sometimes some supervisors I had that would hire someone a lot less qualified.
Yes.
And then they would say, Cynthia, we need you to orient them. Teach them everything you know so that they can do the job. And those times were challenging. But, you know, I always felt like Dr. Geist in Sunday school, he tells us God gives us assignments, tests, and grades. And I felt like my assignment was to figure out how to be humble and do what I was asked to do. I don't own this hospital. I just work here.
Right.
Ooh, girl, I wish I was as holy as you. I also said the same
And
thing.
so I tried to humble myself and do what I was asked to do, and it paid off later because someone saw it. And then I had advocates who said, I've seen you train these last two people.
Sure.
And you should have had the job.
Yeah.
Let's see what we can do.
Yeah.
And so there were people behind the scenes that helped me advance. Even though sometimes I had to stay in a position that didn't feel comfortable for me. I felt like I had outgrown it. But until God said I could move, I couldn't move.
Yeah. And you know, another thing, you know, Tanya made an interesting point. She said she had a white male mentor. A lot of times we look for mentors that look like us, right? And one of the things that I had to do is I wasn't given a mentor like a lot of my male colleagues were given mentors. I wasn't. You know, I sought out a mentor for myself. I watched somebody that I really admired how they worked, their integrity, their work ethic, and I developed a relationship. He was an old white gentleman, but he took me under his wings. And he taught me everything. Like Tanya, he don't do that, don't say that in meetings. You know, all these things that I would not have known had I not had somebody advocating for me. And he had been with the company like 30 years. He was a CIO. He was very well respected. So when he spoke, people listened to him, and he had a seat at the table. But if it had not been for that advocate, you know, him advocating for me, bringing me into the conversation at the table, my journey, my career path would have been a lot more difficult than it was. So I think it's real important to have a mentor, whether you assign one or you seek one out.
That's so true.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
So, Miss Angie, I want to go back to what you talked about at the very beginning when you said that there was room for failure. So in education, there is no room for failure, especially at our schools. Now, the other schools, they can fail, and it'll be okay. But once our schools are failing, it's not okay. Yeah. So when you say that, you know, there's room for failure, there is. And it's a learning curve. It's it's time for teachers to learn or for educators to learn, but not at our schools. And that's sad, but it does not happen. Yeah. We don't have the opportunity to continue to learn. Yeah. So if you fail the first time, you're done.
Yeah, one and done, right? And sometimes we're not always given the latitude or the runway to fail. Absolutely. And so going into a situation, you already know that we're behind just because we're black, because we're women. So like I think Cynthia or Tanya, I can't remember, said that you have to do more. You have to you can't just do what they do. We have to be better than they are. But at the end of the day, my faith has taught me, right? This is what my faith has taught me, is that God is always in control. And while I can see to the corner, he can see around the corner. And even though my path has not been a straight path to directorship, I've had some detours, I've had some twists and turns, I've had to take some assignments that I really didn't want to take. But at the end of the day, God was using all of those things to navigate my path to my ultimate destination.
Definitely.
Right.
Absolutely.
So is this the church or the beauty shop?
It's the beauty shop, but we have the church.
Girl, I love my church. Take it with me everywhere I go.
Church goes everywhere.
So listen to this. How y'all doing with all of the racial discrimination, all of the violence that we've seen, especially against black and brown women? I was just kind of scrolling through earlier today and saw since I think it was 2015, there have been 250 African American women who have been killed by police in their homes. And I just thought, just the stress of kind of knowing that, seeing all the hate that's going on, just, kind of with the Black Lives Matter, like the George Floyd trial, which I can't even watch because,
oh my goodness,
how have you been taking care of yourself? How have you been dealing with all of that?
It's almost like we're kind of numb to it now. I'm speaking for myself. I know we see it so often, even though it's still heartbreaking. It still tears us up, especially if you have young kids. It still tears you up, but it's almost like I said, we're numb to it. Like you see it on the news, you're like, oh, here goes another one.
Right.
It's, we don't really take the time to, I guess, have compassion about it anymore because it just happens so often. And I don't know if that's a good thing.
So I don't know if it's a lack of compassion, or I think sometimes it really is PTSD and we really don't know that that's what it is. So when you are seeing something over and over and over again, little do you know that it is greatly impacting you in ways that you didn't even consciously recognize sometimes.
Right.
So for me, it really is watching Bridgerton over and over again. Anybody seen that?
Even in that, though, I think we owe it to every black man in our life and to all the George Floyds to come to watch. We can't get to the place whereby we have just become so desensitized that we are not moved, because this is real, guys. I mean, it makes you cry. The chief of police testifying today, saying that this is what's in the training manual. This is what we teach them. And to see that, to bring that to reality, and to see that man just in your visual, we owe it to George to say, yeah, this is tough for me, but I know it's even tougher for you. Yeah. So we got to push through it too.
But Julia, as we watch the trial, I know as I've watched the trial, and I've tried not to watch it all day long because that becomes too weighty, and so. But as good of a defense as the prosecution has put on, and they have had some great witnesses, there's still this part of me that feels like the outcome is just going to be the same old.
Absolutely.
And it's hard to really get excited about that. And I think that goes back to your point is, you just kind of expect the same old thing that has always happened. It's never going to change.
I get that, trust me. But I'm just saying, though, at some point, we got to weigh in. We just can't not deal with it and not express.
But I don't think it's that people aren't trying to weigh in. Again, I think it's that day in and day out. It's just a lot.
It is.
And then to try to navigate your life thinking about everybody else on top of that, that's a lot to carry day in and day out. So to be able to check in, maybe in the morning or late afternoon and say, oh my gosh, okay, this is where it is and this was going on. But then after that, I can't check in no more.
Right.
And then let's wait till the next. Yeah, I need to pray about it and give my thoughts about it and then move on to the next day so I can get through the rest of this day.
I'm not saying become totally engrossed in it, but at least to the point whereby we can have a conversation about it like we are doing now. Because a lot of times people don't even check in to have conversations about it.
Right.
Yeah. Just that whole, the idea that there is stress that comes with race and these racial tensions, that there's race-based stress. You know, it's a field, folks study it, and the reality that we have to be mindful of that. You know, I think of it as really kind of self-care.
Sure.
You know, so, you know, unless I want to be in my dark chocolate drawer all day long, I got to put some limits on it, because for me, I've had to just kind of go, you can watch these highlights.
exactly.
You can't watch the full thing.
Right.
You know, I've had to sometimes say, it's time to go to bed.
Yes.
So let's just, you know, kind of make sure I'm getting my sleep, my rest, my exercise, because it's weighty. And I think, you know, sometimes, especially as women, this strong black woman.
Right.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden we having all these issues, and, you know, it can lead to anxiety and depression, all kinds of things, broken relationships. So I just think we have to practice some self-care. So that has been really important for me, because after just kind of watching, like even now when it comes on and they show certain things, I have to turn my head, because I'm aware, I'm woke. But at the same time, you know, I'm just kind of just mindful of how is there tension in my neck? Am I starting to feel anxious? Am I starting to, you know, wanting to text all the men in my life? Where were you? You supposed to be here 5 minutes ago. You okay? You know, because I mean, these days with the pandemic and everything, somebody doesn't call you back, and you're like, oh my Lord,
What
happened? What happened?
Right, exactly.
So,
and for me, being a mother of boys, or I should say men now, because they grown men now, and having a black husband, you know, you know, at one while, you know, I just had this sense of fear all the time. You know, it's like every time the phone rang, you know, at a time that I didn't think it should be ringing. You know, I was always worried that on the other end of that phone call was going to be bad news, because something has happened, because our society has become so divisive, you know, and I think it's great that we have these type of conversations among ourselves, but we need to be talking to people on the other side of the aisle about these kind of conversations. And one of the things we did on our job, we had what we call courageous conversations, where we got blacks and whites in the room, and you know, people volunteered to share some of the things that they had gone through, racial profiling. And when, you know, one lady talked about when she goes on a road trip, that she has to plan her stops, because black people can't stop everywhere. Right. You know, and those are things that they've never had to have the talk, you know, with their kids. And it was really very enlightening for them, because they got to hear our stories, right? And the things that, you know, we go through, and while we're always talking about Black Lives Matter, because the things that, you know, we go through, you've never even had to go through, and so you don't understand. And I think that we need to have more dialogue with them, and not just among ourselves.
When Tanya mentioned the number of women that have been murdered by the hands of police officers, I was unaware that number was so high.
I wasn't either.
Because all we ever hear about is Breonna Taylor and you know, the young lady in Prairie View. That's all we ever hear about. So when you mentioned that number, that kind of, you know, took me by you know, a storm. I was like, oh my, is that many? So why haven't we heard about them? Why is that under the radar? And all we hear about is the men.
Now, I don't have an answer for that, but you know what that statistic was basically kind of showing was that, you know, it was like these women have been killed. They've been killed in their homes, and so of these
by the police.
Yes, by the police.
Really?
Yes, and so when we have these cases of, you know, kind of law enforcement, and there's a shooting or something that's in the home, like there have been 250 women, and you're right, there were names of people that I had never even heard of. Rape. The ages range from like as young as 17 all the way up to like 58 years old. And, you know, so you talk about just thinking about fear, and, you know, there were nights when I would just think, so I'm in my home, I've locked my door, I'm in my bed, and someone can kind of come in and kick the door in. And, you know, in my life, I mean, that is stress in it. Yeah, that is scary. It's stress in and of itself. So I just think that, when we talk about this whole idea of race-based stress, those are things that are real. And we all know that stress will begin to manifest itself in our bodies physically, whether it's hypertension or emotionally with depression and those kind of things. And so, the article that I was looking at was just kind of naming that and just showing how this population of black women, it hasn't really been brought up to the forefront. So when you think about a Breonna Taylor or a Sandra Bland or just so many others that have lost their lives, but to know that there's this significant number and it's happening in their homes, that's supposed to be your sanctuary and your safe place. And so, that has, really caused concern for me. So again, that self-care and why I got to back off the trial and watch what I'm watching, because it's just that statistic is real.
And because of the fact that women are so vulnerable, I think the number probably could be even greater than that. In regards to domestic violence with women as well. The number could be so much greater because those things aren't reported as they should be reported. So women are vulnerable, and we do experience more attacks than we actually should be experiencing. And another reason why a whole nother thing comes up, and that's gun control. So how do you protect yourself? I'm a whole single woman, and I'm going in and out of my house late at night. How do you protect yourself? Whole single. Hello, whole single.
Hello.
Did the camera get that?
Zoom in.
Hey, you ain't been able to do much since COVID.
She cute too.
You've not been able to do much since COVID. Ain't no bunch of dating going on right about now.
A whole single woman.
Yes, be clear. But you do have to think about that, though, in terms of, women. Some women are probably just taken advantage of because they do see you riding in your car. That happened to me one day. I was driving, and the kids were like, "Mom, I know you got your gun." I was like, "Ugh." And I didn't. And this white man pulled up beside me, and he started making gestures toward me. And I'm like, wait a minute, hold on. And I reached to my glove box because I was like, this is what's going to happen here. And my gun was not in there. And I just said, okay, Lord, I need you to take him on.
Well, were you going to shoot him? Were you going to shoot him?
I was going to protect myself.
Preacher packing.
Be clear. I was going to protect myself. I just wasn't going to sit there and
She
be
feared
shy.
for her life.
Exactly. That's what they always say. Yeah, but that's not going to work with her.
I feared for my life.
That's not going to work with her, though. That ain't going to work with her.
I would, hey, we'd have to find out. I did not know. I felt so threatened. White man just pulled up beside me and making gestures, and then he did this, and I'm like, wait, what we doing here? And the light was red.
I was looking at the young lady, I think it was at University of Houston, where she was an athlete, and some kids called security and said that something was going on.
Oh, that was
in her room.
was Stephen F. Austin,
Was
I
that
think.
Stephen
Yes.
F. Austin?
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, they called the police to come to her room. She was asleep.
Wow.
But
It was
they
a
were
prank.
doing it. It was a prank. They were doing it maliciously. And so the police come in, looking for some big confrontation. She was dangerous. This girl is asleep.
Wow.
Gone
And it
strong.
could have
Yeah.
turned out so much worse.
Yeah.
But her parents, are taking action against the university
As they should,
But that was just such a scary situation to me, to think that your child can be there doing absolutely nothing wrong.
That's cool.
And that's another thing. It almost makes you think twice, even 3 times before you pick up the phone to call a police, particularly for somebody of color, because you just never know how that's going to turn out.
Yeah.
Think about all the gentlemen, all the mental ill men who families have called the police on them, and they wound
To get
up
help.
dead.
They called to get help.
They called to
Yes.
get help. And
Yes.
And I think
They're
one
dead.
thing with because of this statistic, what they were also associating it with was a lot of this had to do with those no-knock warrants.
Yes.
So the police would come into these homes of
busting
these
it, yeah.
African American women because of these no-knock warrants, and so that's why legislation has had to be changed on that. But again, just the scariness of that,
scary.
that you are in your home where you're supposed to be able to be safe, and then you have something like that happen, and yeah.
something else came to mind. It was a lady, I think she was in Pittsburgh or something, but police came to her home, and she was completely unclothed.
Yes.
Oh, she was naked.
that.
Yes,
Yeah.
she had
She was
nothing
completely
on,
naked.
and they searched her entire apartment before they ever gave her anything to cover herself
my
up
God.
with.
There's a
Yes.
lawsuit
Where's
going
the
on.
dignity in that? I mean,
Yeah.
that's just.
I think that was Chicago.
It was.
Okay.
I believe it was
Yeah,
Chicago.
yeah, she was Chicago.
I think she was a social
She was a
worker.
social
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, in that case, we say we have the talk with our sons and kind of while driving,
Gotta
just
have it with
having
our
that
daughters,
talk.
too.
Yep,
The
gotta have
daughters,
that
too,
talk
yeah.
with the daughters while driving, or even
That's
in the
right.
house. Like, how do you respond when you hear that banging on the door? And in the case of Breonna Taylor, I mean, her boyfriend called the police.
Police on the police.
So, just something for us to really kind of think about and just be mindful of. But even with all of that, this idea of having that self-care, having that support system, because, facing things like this, resilience.
Yeah.
We got to find a way that, okay, we going to advocate, we going to fight back, we going to march, whatever we going to do, but we got to take care of, that heart and mind space as well.
And make decisions that will allow us to live another day.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes, this
And
is
one
not
of
the
the
time
things-
to be right.
Yeah. One of the things Angie said too was so important too is that for that friend who does not pick up the phone or only will just talk to you and you don't see, go check on them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Knock on their door. Go check on them.
Yeah. Yep, I think that, between legislation and just all the things that we can do, we're going to have conversations. We're human to human. We're going to have to be able to talk to one another. And, I'm always talking about social justice and compassion. But, what my faith has done for me is it has just helped me to really look at the issues and move in love.
Yes.
To not be, you don't know this, sometimes you get tired. It's like that person that goes, I didn't know that you had to plan your stops. And it's like, girl, really?
Exactly.
However, for me.
That love thing, though. I tell
Right.
you.
It's just trying to just ask God to just shape my heart.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that I can love myself and practice some self-love, so I can love those who look like me and those who don't. And just really move with compassion.
Yeah.
Because without that, I just think that you get angry, you stay angry,
Yes.
and at some point it turns
And
on
mad
you.
black woman syndrome, right?
So that's what my faith has, really done
Yeah.
for me. And it's interesting because you mentioned the Black Lives Matter and the All Lives Matter. And it was stressful just watching on Facebook those relationships breaking up.
Yes.
Because all of a sudden you found out that your little cube, your office mate, and they all lives matter, and now you. So that's where my faith had to come in and go. Love ethic of Christ. Love you. The one said you was a Christian out loud. So now you got to act like it.
There you go.
I know that's right. So that's a good place for me to jump in, Tanya, because I recently read in Psychology Today that external stressors have really affected all types of relationships. Your romantic relationships, your professional relationships, platonic relationships, and just day to day you have been affected because you just don't know the stress it is to maintain relationships. When the pandemic first started, we were jumping on house party. We were talking about turn into your church on, you can, any way to stream, newfaith.org. You can look at the Facebook, and I'm like, okay. And then FaceTime and people, family and friends. And after a while, I was like, I'm electronically burned out. I'm just tired. I don't want to see no phone, because not only that, I was working from home.
Yes.
So I was talking to people, go to meeting and all of that. And I was like, I am so burned out electronically. How do you manage?
Yes.
How do you handle you? And in a household where you have families, you have moms. Sometimes it's a mom and a dad. Sometimes it's just a mama there trying to help the kids go to school online, and she's trying to work online.
Right. Exactly.
And so, it just became so engrossed, involved, until when I got ready to go back to work, I was like, they said, come to work. I was like, oh, cool, I'm coming. I'm coming.
What time you want me there?
What day you want me there? And then when I got there, my relationship with my coworker was tested, because he was talking about Thanksgiving. Hey, I'm going to pick up Mama and them in New Orleans. I'm like, what? And then they all coming back to my house and I'm cooking. And then the next week, he don't show up to work Monday. I'm okay, you my office mate. Then you come to work Tuesday. Sniffling, and I'm like, wait a minute now, hold on now. I got a little salty.
We're not close like that.
I got a little salty. And then the week goes on, and by the end of the week, you finally tell me your son tested positive last week. Now you testing positive.
Yeah.
So I'm exposed, which means you exposing my 93-year-old. I was real salty.
Right, right.
Yeah.
I was real salty.
You should have punched him in the
I
throat.
wanted
Now you wanted to get fired.
I wanted to. I really did.
Coming to work sick.
And how just inconsiderate can you be?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this,
Yes.
go ahead,
I
Tanya.
was just gonna say, you just see people and just kind of just the selfishness or the
Yes,
it's
irresponsible.
been a lot to kind
Yes.
of manage these relationships. And even now with the who's getting the vaccine, don't answer. But I do want to see people's cards, but I'm gonna try to mind my business, and that's gonna be a source of tension because some folks are like, I'm not doing that, and
I heard a radio
I'm
personality
trying to figure
say
out
that
why.
yesterday, that not Friday. I'm not doing that vaccine. I'm like, girl, get off the radio talking to people.
Exactly.
Please, because you don't know how ignorant you sound right now.
Yeah.
Simply because if we took vaccines when we were kids to go to school, mumps, measles, rubella. Come here, Miller, help me out.
Yeah.
All them vaccines, we took them just so we could go to school. And now all of a sudden you get to the point, and at this rate, we probably not going to never get back. So even the stress, the external stresses on relationships are continuing to develop.
Yeah.
I mean, people have to deal with the fact that there's been a loss of income in families because of the fact that people can't go to work anymore.
Sure.
I mean, and it's really difficult to try to figure out, how do I manage myself in this season? What do I do? Because the truth of the matter is, and I read, I'm a big fan of Brene
You
Brown.
sure reading a lot.
Yes, I did. Yeah. Girl, I ain't got nobody to talk to. She ain't got nobody to talk to.
She got to read.
I ain't got nobody to talk to.
Baby, we ain't read nothing.
About what she says, though, because I'm trying to lead you to the point
Brene,
about
she's
what has
good.
gotten me through
Okay,
this.
like,
Yeah, it's
go
been
ahead.
tough.
Okay,
Even
what?
trying to take care of my 93-year-old mom in the house with me, a set routine. You stuck to this routine. This is what you have to do. But Brene Brown said, and I thought it was so good, says, staying vulnerable is the risk we have to take if we want to experience connection. I'll say that again. Staying vulnerable is the risk you have to take if you want to experience connection. And I think that's what God has called us to. We can't be separated. We've got to be at a place whereby we're able to be vulnerable enough, show people who we really are. Because I had to let y'all know I wanted to just knock that person upside the head. I was done with him. I mean, because that's the realness that people are actually having to deal with. And I wanted to just go and kind of block myself off and I'm not going to talk to you anymore. But I had to come back to a place whereby I had to start checking on him. You all right today? How you feeling today? Because he was really sick. It really took him down, So we have to stay vulnerable. And I think that's the thing that has really gotten me through this period of a lot of isolation. A lot of isolation. It's just the fact that, by God's grace, and if it had not been that I was able to at least find a soft spot in me to say, okay, where's your compassion? Where's your love? Where's your understanding? So it's for his grace that I'm able to at least say at this point.
And talking about vulnerability, Julia, I think we live in a society that it's not okay to say you're not okay. We need to let people know that it's okay to say that you're not okay. When I started working from home last year, I'm a social butterfly. I need interaction. I need to talk to people face to face and not on Teams. And so I really struggled with being home by myself all day, every day, because Danny goes into the office. Baby, I talk his head off when you get home. People like, girl, get away. Look there.
That's what my mama. She wants me to just key in when I get to the house to her, and I be like, girl, I'm so tired. I don't know what to do.
Just give me a minute.
But even though, before we move on, I was talking to individuals who've experienced even personal romantic bad relationships. They wake up next to somebody like, who are you and what you doing here?
Ooh.
Why are you in my house? Women have experienced that and have actually gone through some horrible breakup in their relationships because they didn't realize, oh, I didn't know he did that.
That's because they were together all the time.
Yeah.
I didn't know he did that. I didn't know he was like that. And the least little thing get on your nerve. So you got to figure out how do you have your me time in the midst of time with everything else and everybody else too.
Absolutely.
I think so, and especially since women are such strong caregivers, so we giving care and then don't realize, wait a minute, I'm not okay.
Yes, we are
This is
that.
my third day in a row feeling like I'm about to cry and the dark chocolate. It's time to get connected.
Right.
So that's
Not about to cry. You just to break out crying.
Yeah.
For
Or
no
break out
reason.
cry. Right.
And look, God made gas cheap for a while. And you jump in that car and drive.
Yes.
Not going anywhere, just drive.
Just take a ride. Take a ride.
Take the long route.
Well, it ain't cheap
Well,
no more.
I'm not okay.
Yeah.
So I've been very depressed. Fearful. Depressed. I don't want to be around people. I'm isolated. I don't want to be with my friends. So let me just tell y'all I'm sorry. But this pandemic has been really bad for me. I'm over the prayer ministry, and people call me to pray for them, but I need praying for myself. But I have to always be this strong person.
Yeah.
But this has been really something, and the isolation, the fear. My mother's 86, and I have 2 young adults, and this last year I was so afraid that my mother was going to get COVID because Kendi and Carly were in and out the house. Kendi got COVID, Carly got COVID. And so the fear of my mother getting it and dying and, being in the hospital and me not being able to see her. But I do remember this. The Lord told me, we in church now.
Oh, it's okay. Huh?
We just moved from the beauty shop to the church. Okay, we got you.
After she done made us all cry.
Yeah, she made us
Lashes about to come off.
But the Lord told me that I would not be touched.
Amen.
And my son got it, my daughter got it, even a good friend came to my house. My husband and I and my mother never got COVID. Wow. And I thank God for that.
Yeah.
But what I can tell you guys, even though you feel down, I thank God I still have not lost my joy.
Yes.
Lord. I still have joy. I'm not happy all the time.
Yeah.
But he never said we're going to be happy. But I still have my joy. But this pandemic, I've learned my faith has really been increased because things that I thought that I could depend on are not the things that I can depend on.
Exactly.
So my faith has really been increased, and I thank you guys for being my friends. And not giving up on me because they would call me when I wouldn't call them. Because I didn't want to talk to them. I just wanted to be by myself.
We be trying to put on FaceTime. I ain't
didn't
getting
wanna
on
be on
every day.
Everybody
And I
on
just
camera
keep
but
pushing.
her.
I just keep pushing. Come on. But you're not the only one.
You're not the only
You're
one.
not the only one.
And I know I'm not the only one.
I have experienced some depression. I think I went through about a couple of months where I didn't want to talk to nobody. I didn't want to be around nobody. Sunday morning come. I'm sorry, Dr. Lewis, but Sunday morning would come. I ain't want to turn on no YouTube and sit there and listen to him. I was like, oh, okay.
I didn't do it.
And then I sit there. Sometimes I didn't go to church. I said, I ain't going to church today.
Not today.
But
I ain't
that's
going
what
today.
isolation does, right? When you're by yourself, you got all these voices in your head, and it's who are we listening, to? And one of the things with being isolation, it's okay for somebody to tell you when they're not on camera on the phone that I'm okay. when you can't look people in the face,
That's why we
it's
kept trying to
harder
look at
to
her.
know whether people are really okay or they're just saying that they're okay. Yeah.
So somebody got some friends, they need to look in their face.
Yeah.
Need to see. Because
Yeah.
depression is real. It's a reality. Anybody can be depressed.
And it can happen to anybody.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Anybody.
And it's
I
been
mean,
so much going on. Just
So
with
much.
the losses, just people just slip through your fingers, and the way we usually say farewell, you don't get to do that. You don't didn't get to have the funerals and the closure. So it has been
been
a
a
lot.
year.
It has been
been a lot.
It's been a
It's been
lot. And,
traumatic.
you know, I
It
think
has been
also
traumatic.
just I'm with you, Vanessa. Some days I'm like, I'm not happy, but I have joy.
Yeah.
You know, I have joy, and I think you just have to hold on to that.
Yeah.
Just knowing that that God is going to turn things around, and He's with us. And you know, and I feel like that's what I have learned, that to practice my faith, not in this kind of superficial
Right.
or even in a corporate way, but my individual faith. Because those days when it's like, yep, I'm gonna cry, today's the day. Just how do you know, kind of get yourself through that, and that isolation, I think, is so important, that we gotta stay connected, even if there's one person. I mean, I got a couple of good girlfriends, but I got some folks I can just text, sad face, pray, and keep it moving. And so I think, you know, that's what you have to kind of really lean into, because the enemy wants us isolated.
Yeah.
He wants us off and by ourselves. But, you know, if we can stay connected, then I think that's where the power comes.
I have a friend that has been severely depressed, and there are resources for mental health that you can access.
I work
Sadly,
at the
on the
mental health
screen.
place, baby.
She said she
I work at the mental health place.
But look, it's a difference in working at the mental health place
No, it
and
ain't.
getting
No, it
help
ain't.
from the
No,
mental
it
health
ain't.
place.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, but
Yes,
but we have to. But so you know the spiel. You know that we
I
have to
know the
reach out
spiel. I know
for help when we need it.
Baby, let me help you. I deal with people from 8 to 5
Yeah.
every day that draws.
They draw from you,
Yeah, you
but
drain.
you need somebody to pour into you.
Yes.
Self-care.
So I'm not talking
I
about all
got
the
me a
people that
massage
take all day.
last Saturday.
Yeah.
I went and got me a
Yay.
massage. I say everybody gonna mask
Get a
up
plan.
and
Get a
we're gonna go
plan.
on because these shoulders is tight and
Yes.
I'm single.
And the good news is we back in the beauty shop.
Yeah.
Oh, y'all wanna talk
Because
about
a
that
lot
now?
of our support came from
the beauty
places
shop.
where we were in the beauty shop, where we were getting a massage, where we were getting the mani-pedi, you
Yeah.
know. So now that we're able to get out a little bit more, hopefully we'll have those supports back in place. But until then, even if you work at the mental health place, it's different than seeking
right.
help.
And even when you don't, when you're in leadership at church, you're in ministry, people pull on you,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And want
And
to
they
dump on
expect
you
you
and
to
share with you, and you're constantly ministering to people and pouring out, and they forget that you have your own stuff,
Right.
right?
Yes.
And so, how often have you, had to work in ministry while you're wounded,
Yes.
and working through your woundedness,
Yes.
I remember one day a girl, called me saying, "Reverend Angie, I need you to pray for my friend." I'm like, "You need to pray for it today because I ain't got nothing for you."
I remember when my husband had been diagnosed and was going through, and I was still coming to church, and I was looking pretty and just smiling, and
You looking pretty.
She thought she looked pretty.
well, that was my
And that's all
intent.
that matters.
But to validate what you confirm what you just said, one young lady said, "Reverend Julie, you always look so pretty. I don't even understand. I know you got a lot going on." I said, "Girl, it's by the grace of God that I keep pressing my way." But that would be some Sundays I'd come and sit up in here and I'd just be looking.
Holding back the tears.
But then that was something. Then I had to realize, wait a minute, he
You were
does.
sure
have
hollering a lot of them Sundays too.
Yes, yes. I didn't stay seated the whole time.
I support the hollering. Yeah. I just think, again, just the importance of the self-care,
Sure.
of having a plan. Like, I'm walking today, I'm going to the park the next
Yes.
day. Like, what am I doing to take care of myself?
take care of me.
When I took care of my mother, I was very aware that I needed to stay healthy.
Yeah.
Because I had 3 school-age children, a husband, a mother with dementia. I had to stay healthy
Yeah.
because if I didn't, the house of cards is going to start
Right.
looking a little funny. So, you know, I think that is so important that we just remember our faith, that we just hold on to our relationships with each other, and that we really practice that self-care.
I think we can all agree that this year has tested our faith.
Absolutely.
But when we look back over the last year, after all that we've been through, look at here.
God
We
is
still here.
In the beauty shop.
We are still here at the beauty shop.
Getting our hair done.
So, ladies, this has been wonderful to be able to talk and just kind of hear each other's hearts and share some laugh and some tears and all of that. It's really been good. And I want to invite you to join us for Bible study next week, where we hear from Dr. Lewis. He is going to lead us through some scripture that will really help us to continue to look at how we are responding. And we need to hear what God has to say about all of these challenges that we face. We know that He loves us, He cares for us. And so I invite you next week to join us for Bible study, where we can hear from Dr. Lewis and hear what God has to say about all of our challenges.